Our guest today is Michael. Michael is a Chief Burnout Officer, and actually, he is a leading expert on how to recover and overcome burnout. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about how to overcome burnout, and he's going to share a lot about his experiences. But I hope you guys can learn from this show how to avoid this in your life, because that's the main objective of Michael's business and my business as well. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm Zsofia of Myprocesses, and I help busy entrepreneurs to automate and outsource their time-consuming tasks without sacrificing the profit. So if you are looking to make the 4-hour work week a reality or simply avoid burnout, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get more videos like this. So, Michael, how did you become a burnout officer, a chief burnout officer?
Oh, it helped when I had my own personal burnout and recovered from it. And real quickly, what had happened back in 2007, I was hired as a healthcare executive for a uh, startup healthcare entity just outside of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I am a US and Canadian citizen, born in the US and then immigrated to Canada in 2004, and then was hired as the first employee of this new clinic to recruit physicians, hire staff, negotiate a site relocation at the last minute, work with government funders and officials and the community on growing this brand new clinic. And over the period of the next 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, I was working some insane hours. I was sending and receiving emails as early as 6 a.m. and as late as 11 p.m., 7 days a week. So I was putting in a ton of hours, and that was consistent for a couple of years. And during that time as well, I stopped taking care of myself. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't getting enough exercise. And I stopped doing things that I enjoyed doing because I was just working and working and working. And it all came to a crashing halt in
And
May
you
of
were an
2000.
employee of this business, am I right? So it was not your
Yes,
own business.
it wasn't my own, although I acted as if it was. I
Uh-huh.
treated it as it was my own business. And I think that was, in a way, good, but also it was good for me now, especially when I launched my business, which we'll get into in a moment. But it helped me, understand startups. And it wasn't my first startup experience. I had worked at several other startups earlier in my career, so I knew a lot of the challenges, and I knew that there were going to be long hours, but I gave too much of my time. And then basically what had happened from May 2009 to May 2010, I had what I like to call my year of worst case scenarios, where over a period of 369 days, so just over a year, I had a heart attack that should have killed me. And then I lost my job at this clinic during the Great Recession in the US and Canada. Then a few months later, my car was repossessed by the bank. And then finally, my home went into foreclosure. The bank had taken the home away. So all of
So
those
worst
lost,
nightmares happening with you on that year, within a
yeah,
course of a
everything,
year.
everything, like all those things happened in a year. And it was because I was burned out. I wasn't taking care of myself, and that burnout created all of those things to happen.
So you
And
say that these things happened because of your burnout?
it definitely did, because I was burned out. I wasn't eating well and not taking care of my health, which created the scenario to have the heart attack. Because I was burned out, I was making mistakes at work and errors in judgment on some things because I was just not paying attention and I was too stressed and burned out. So that created that. When you're on unemployment and you're not working, because I was without a job for several months, and I was taking heart medication that cost $1,000 a month, and I didn't have any drug insurance coverage. So I was on unemployment that pays you less money, and then on top of it, I knew I have $1,000 a month bill for medication. It was difficult to pay other bills. So when you stop paying your car payment, the bank is going to take the car back, and that's ultimately what happened. And then finally, the same thing with the house. We had moved to Toronto, and we were getting ready to sell the house, but we hadn't been making our normal house payments for a while because we weren't bringing in any income other than unemployment, and that was basically covering our food cost and the medication. So that's ultimately what all happened. But because I was burned out, it created those challenges, and all of those scenarios came to light. And it was a really difficult year, but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it gave me the opportunity to really take a deep and loving look at my life and determine what were my behaviors, my thoughts, my beliefs that created those scenarios to happen. And then I started the work to reinvent myself. And I did. It took a couple of years, but then I got back on my feet financially, had a house, we had a car, had a job. Pretty much everything that we lost, we got back really quickly. And ultimately, it was a way to rebuild my life in a way that I knew that I never wanted to go through burnout again. So I had to make some changes in my life to prevent those things from happening. So that's how I recovered from my burnout. And then ultimately, it created my opportunity to launch the Breakfast Leadership Organization to address burnout with others. Because after I reinvented myself and I was back to a better way than I was before, I started noticing, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, a lot of people were burning out. And this was, in 2015, 2016, when I formally launched the organization. There's a lot of people that were burning out. Now, if we fast forward to today with this pandemic and COVID-19, burnout cases are going sky high. And it's a really, really problematic thing. So, definitely keeping me productive. So, love to jump in next and into how burnout can help small businesses and startup companies run their business. And I can talk about how I launched my business as well, if you like.
First, I am very interested. So you had your own burnout experience. You went through all these horrible happenings in your life. You managed to stand up, started a business with an intention to help others overcoming burnout. How does it work? Do they approach you before it's happening to them? Do people notice the signs, the warnings, or do they come to you right when they are in the middle of this very hard situation?
Typically, if it's individuals, they're already burned out. If it's organizations, they are bringing me in to help their team because there might be some people in their organization that are burned out, but not everybody, and they want to get ahead of it. And I'm working with several organizations right now that are, in that particular situation, and I'm starting to see a lot of companies, especially with this pandemic, realizing that the mental and physical health of their employees is a huge concern. So they want to bring in individuals like yourself and myself to go in and talk with them about how they can prevent burnout, still get their job done, still be able to do the things they need to do, but without the burnout. And you can do that even in a pandemic with all of the crazy hours and everything else that a lot of people are working. You can still accomplish what you need to do and not burn out.
Okay, clear. So there are both scenarios, and luckily, or not sure how lucky is that, but we have this very uncommon situation with the COVID, and the company started to realize that they have to do prevention, which is usually the key in terms of burnout prevention.
Definitely. It's
Okay,
very
so let's
important.
go back to the times when you launched this business. So you already stood up on your feet
Mhm.
from the high situation you went on after the burnout. What were your initial difficulties when starting a business like that?
The first one was I talked to a lot of people that had launched businesses, and again, with my startup experience and working for organizations, I knew, the challenges of launching a new business. For me, there was a lot of learning that I had to do. I had to learn about marketing a little bit more than I understood it because my original background many years ago was in accounting. So we were on the finance side. We made fun of marketing people. We blamed them for spending all of our money and all of that. But
Would you like me to edit it out, or are you
no, no,
open
no, no,
about
no,
this?
no, no, no. Leave that in. I don't
Okay.
believe that now. I did believe that in my youth, which was very naive and improper to me.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing people are critical. If you can't market, you don't have anything to sell. No one will know that you exist. No one will buy your product or service. So marketing is a critical component to it. And it's storytelling. It's convincing people that would be your potential customers that by utilizing your product or your service will make their lives better. Doesn't matter what it is. That's the story of marketing. Sales is serving. You're serving people by selling them things. Marketing is the storytelling of what you have that can serve those people. And again, it doesn't matter what your product or service is. That's the foundation and the premise. You get that right, you'll be fine. But for me, I launched my business while I was still working full time for an organization. I was back in healthcare. I was doing health, a similar role to what nearly killed me, but I went about it differently. I had boundaries around how I spend my time, and every individual needs to have boundaries around how they spend their time, and they need to allocate time that they work and time that they don't. Time for self care, which can be exercise or doing things you like, reading a book, watching television, going for a walk, whatever. You have to schedule that stuff because if you don't, you won't do it. Launched my business in 2015, 2016. I was still working as a healthcare executive when I launched the business because I felt that it was important for me to make sure that I still had a consistent income while I was building the business because my marketing skills at that particular point weren't as strong as they needed to be. So I had to do a lot of learning, and I hired coaches and went to tons of conferences and signed up for a lot of webinars and all kinds of different things, and probably had information overload, quite frankly, on
Uh-huh.
all of the things, which is common for people. They're like, there's so many different things you can do. And I tried all kinds of different things. I did the funnel stuff. I did the Facebook ads. I did all of those things. And while so many of those things didn't work out well, I still feel it was important for me to do those things because it helps you narrow down what actually works for you and your organization. And also, it works for you in figuring out who do you work for? What clients do you like working with? Who's your audience? Because we think, I'm going to launch this product or service and the whole world's going to buy it. Well, there's nothing on the product or on the planet that everybody consumes other than oxygen and air and water, which is more or less free. So there's no product or service that everybody
You
buys.
need to find your niche. That's
You do.
non-negotiable.
It's critical, and it takes time. You may think you know who you are going to work with, but that can change, and you want to be open to that because you may find that your audience is actually one that's going to buy your products and services or have you speak at events or have you work with them on a variety of different things. Could be an industry that you didn't think you would work with. I look at the industries that I've spoken to over the last couple of years and the people that I've worked with. The majority of them were not the industry that I originally had targeted to work for.
So you needed to do the adjustments that it was required during
Yeah,
development. Mhm.
yeah, and again, having that opportunity, at least in the early days of the organization, to still have a full-time role that allows me to be able to do the things that I need to do, eat and pay for utilities and have a place to live and all of that. I didn't have to worry about that because I see so often with startups and small businesses that if things, decline a little bit in business, if that's your livelihood, you're going to have some huge problems. And burnout, financial burnout, is a huge concern. That was, of course, obviously a big part of the equation for me as well. Was having that stress of not having enough money coming in to cover all of those things was really problematic for me, and I had to do a lot of work to prevent it from really giving me a whole lot of stress, especially when you're healing from a heart attack. The last thing you want to do to your heart is add more stress to it in the early days of recovery. It's just not healthy. So it was obviously a stressful time, but I did a lot of things to make sure that it wasn't overwhelming,
Mhm.
even going through all of those losses. And for businesses, you figure out, it's going to take some time, but figure out who your ideal clients are, and make sure, and those could change. You might be working in one particular sector right now, but in the next year or two, you might be working in a completely different sector and be okay with that. Be
That's right.
open to it, because that's going to grow your business. And you can say, well, I work with insurance, I work with tech, I work with healthcare, I work with education, I work with legal. It could be all kinds of different industries, manufacturing. And when you have that opportunity, then when you are presenting or pitching a particular client, if you've got experience in that field and say, yes, I've worked with other industries, they look at it and they go, okay, you know our industry, so the know, like, and trust factor comes in, and then they're willing to work with you. It makes it easier to land that
Mhm.
sale.
Yes, that's right. So if you have your ideal client, you can be more connected to them. That's what I feel. So if I can work with a person who is like more close to me in terms of ways of thinking, like we are very close to each other because we have the same assumptions, feels like it's so much easier to work with such a person. So I also think that it's a critical to figure out during your marketing plans. Okay, so but we are still in the beginning of your story. When you launched this business, you had a full-time job. You were super busy with learning all about marketing, and you had to learn. What helped you in this situation to avoid as much stress as possible?
For me, it was establishing boundaries around when I was going to work, and of course, working for a full-time, role.
That sounds hard.
I it is. So there is going to be extra hours. So what I ended up doing was I made sure it's like, okay, I'm going to allocate 2 to 3 hours, during the week, to work on my business. And I'm going to work every other weekend on things. But the weekends were going to be very low key. I was going to be doing some things while watching a sporting event. It could be college football or baseball or hockey or
Whatever
American
you enjoy, I
football
guess.
or traditional. So I'm focusing on that. And I'm not a fan of multitasking. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's really the only thing that I would do, is like I will have the game on in the background, and I can switch to it and watch it in between doing some things. And I found, and of course, that drags out the time to launch the business. But for me, it was beneficial because then I could work through all of those different webinars and reading materials and ebooks on how to launch your business, how to market, how to find your niche audience, all of those things that I learned because I didn't really have a marketing background. That helped me get really crystal clear on who are the audiences that would likely work with me regarding their burnout prevention as an individual or as an organization. And over time, you start getting better and you start fine tuning things, and you realize, okay, these are the organizations I like working with. These are the organizations that I want to be able to speak at their conferences. And then you get really pinpoint specific on who to reach out.
Hmm.
And by doing that on top of, and I use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, as far as I'm concerned, is the best social media platform for business to business or business to, I don't want to say necessarily consumer, but client type of work. For me, it's worked out really well for me to do that. Again, I tried the other media platforms. I'm still on all of those social media platforms, and every organization's different. There are organizations that are making a ton of money, being on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook. But for me, LinkedIn has been the arena that's been helpful because I can connect to the decision makers for organizations and reach out to them and say, how's your organization dealing with the COVID-19 stress right now? What are some things you're doing to help your employees?
Uh-huh.
And I tell them, I say, I'm conducting a study basically, which I am. I'm doing research to see what great organizations are doing to help. And if they're not doing anything, then I can say, well, I'm more than happy to have a conversation around that on some ideas that you could do to
Hmm.
help with things. And the only limit with that is just the time in the day. And especially with a lot of organizations right now, and I'm sure a lot of companies that are, watching this right now are realizing that it's difficult to connect with some people right now because if everyone's working remotely or working from home, their normal quote unquote working hours might be different than they used to be. So trying to reach people during that typical 9 to 5 window that so many of us were working in before might not be the same. So it's just having an understanding around that. So long story short, what ended up happening is I did this for a couple of years after launching the business, and then finally, was gaining enough momentum and success and had enough clients to be able to say, okay, it's time to cut the umbilical cord and go full in on running the organization. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and it's been great. And the thing of it is, too, during this pandemic, I'm very fortunate that I was able to pivot the organization. Of course, with the burnout cases and everything else, it's been really challenging. But speaking at events and going to conferences and all of that has been absolutely amazing. And I've been speaking to more people this year than I have in the first 2 years of the organization because I'm able to serve a need that people are having right now, just like you are.
Yes, so you have this ability to help, especially in this time, and I think that must be not just a coincidence. So that people who you speak to are quite lucky to hear your message. Do you have something that you would make sure to share with our audience regarding burnout and this specific situation? Maybe just number one tip they need to keep in mind.
Yeah, for me, I think if there's I'm gonna throw in a couple and it'll be quick. Number one is make sure you're getting good quality sleep night after night.
Sleep.
Yeah, you got to get good restful sleep because we do so much damage to our bodies on a daily basis. If we get deep sleep, that's when your body's repairing itself from the things that we do to ourselves. And if you're not getting enough sleep and not restful sleep, then you're not repairing that damage. So then today's damage, it gets piled on to tomorrow's damage, the next day and the next day. And that's how you can end up with clogged arteries, have heart attacks, have mental situations, physical ailments and things like that. And the second thing that goes around that is have firm boundaries around how you spend your time. Schedule things and and make sure you schedule your self-care and well-being time. Schedule those things, put them on your calendar. And a pro tip, if it's a paper calendar that you use, or if you use a digital calendar, color code your self-care, the stuff that's beneficial for you to make you healthier and feel good. Use your favorite color for that appointment on your calendar. The reason why you want to do that is because your brain is programmed to see your favorite color. It just is. So that way, when you look at your calendar for this week or next week, or even looking back for the last couple weeks or couple months, if you don't see your favorite color enough, that's a warning sign that you're not taking care of yourself and you need to put some more self-care and well-being appointments in your calendar. It makes a huge difference. And I can look back at last week's calendar and say, okay, yes, I have several hours of taking care of myself and doing things. And it's not just exercise and going for walks or meditation or yoga or anything like that. I mean, you can do that. Obviously, it's beneficial, but watching a sporting event or reading a book or going for a walk or going to a coffee shop lunch with your friend, that's
Things that you
self-care.
enjoy.
These are things that you bring you joy and fulfillment in your life. Schedule those and color code those. And then that way you can look at your calendar, and if you see a lot of your favorite color, you know that, well, this has been a good day or a good week because I'm doing things that make me happy and fulfilled. And when you do that, that keeps stress lower, and prolonged stress turns into burnout. If you can keep your stress at a reduced level, you won't burn out.
I love it because it's simple but still genius. So have enough sleep, so obvious, but we tend to forget about that. Spend enough time on things you like, and even color code it. I actually really like it, so I'm sure I will add to my calendar after this interview and start color coding. So guys, also you do that. Michael, I have just one question left before we leave, and that's because I know that you are outsourcing, and it's also connected very much to the boundaries you have to have your free time, which you value so much, with a reason, of course. What are the tasks that you are outsourcing?
Oh, I have my podcast show, so I outsource the editing of that. So whenever I finish recording, I transfer the recorded file to my podcast editor, and they take care of it, and they give me back the finished version and all the show notes as well, for example. I have people, that are guests on my show to basically write their own show notes. And I copy and I paste them because it's like, this is your show, this is your interview. What do you want in the show notes? And that way they do it. I copy it and paste it, format it a bit to make sure it looks nice. And same thing with the bio picture and all of that kind of stuff. That's the next thing for me to do, is to offload some of that work as well, but I still enjoy it and I have time to do it. So it's one of those things where it's like, for everybody it's different. Some people, they don't handle anything other than, and quite frankly, they don't even handle the sending of the recording. Somebody has connection to where it's recorded and they download it and upload it and all of that good stuff. So that way it just makes it nice and clean, so they don't have to do that. I do that. A lot of my content creation is written, by additional people besides myself. So on my blog and the articles and all of that stuff, some of it's written by me, some of it's produced by other people, but it's all in alignment with business tips or burnout or things like that. All my social media posts are scheduled. I've got a couple things that grab feeds and just automatically send them out on social media. So I don't touch a lot of that, which is great, because for one of the things that I do, I take the month of December off of work. So I'm not working for the whole month. And by scheduling and automating all of these things, I can take a month off and there's no impact to what's being generated as far as content is concerned. Clients are aware that I'm off. They can obviously reach me if they need something that's critical, but normally December is a quiet month anyway in North America, so it's not a busy, productive time anyway. So those are some of the things that I've automated and offloaded. And as time goes on and the business continues to grow, there will be more things that I'll automate. Making sure email, all the email and scheduling and all that stuff would be all offloaded. I use a scheduler so people can schedule their own meetings.
That's important. That's very obvious, but very important. Yes.
Yeah, that one right there. If that would be the one thing that I think would kill my business if I didn't have that option, because it's you set up the times in the system. Doesn't matter what scheduler you use. You set up the times that you're available, and everything else is blocked off. And it does a great job to make sure that you don't overcommit yourself on things. And it's been a game changer for me to make sure that I'm doing, the self-care time in my calendar, as well as being available for people to be able to be on my show or meet with me or have conversations with me or whatnot.
I'm so happy you mentioned taking a whole month off. That's completely possible. You don't have to be the employee of your own business, and you should have the right to recharge your batteries, think about the future of your business. And you guys that you're looking at, the listeners right now, you can do that. And it's so important in order to avoid burnout. And the key is automation and outsourcing. If you have the well set processes, you can do that. So Michael, thank you for sharing this information with us. And the last question basically is just how people can reach out to you if they feel like they need your help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity today. Best place to find me is breakfastleadership.com. And at the bottom of the homepage, there's a thing where you can just send me a quick note and ask me a quick question. My email is michael@breakfastleadership.com, so you can send me an email that way. I'm on social media, all the channels under the letter B and then Fast Leadership. Or if you do a Google search or a web search for hashtag breakfast leadership, you'll find a ton of stuff where I've shared things, and you can find me on pretty much all the major platforms.
Breakfast Leadership, but for sure all these links and connections will be down in the show notes, so check it out if you need to connect Michael. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us. And don't forget, stop firefighting, be the creator of your company. Thank you.
Thank you.